Hey everyone, Matthew here on the Movie Mates channel. I'm of course joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you. Now we've got another What If review, episode 6 this week. As I say, if you haven't been keeping up to date with the channel recently, we've been doing all the Disney Plus Marvel shows, starting with WandaVision and now up to date with What If. So as always, I'll pass over to Cam to kick us off with the synopsis of this week's episode. So yeah, off to you, buddy.
So this episode asks the question, what if Killmonger saved Tony Stark? Of course, talking about, the incident in Afghanistan, where Tony was captured by the Ten Rings. The bomb exploded and it caused him to need the help of the arc reactor to keep his heart running. So this is a very different episode, I think. With a very a mesh of two franchises where I think they're the most incongruous, like the two that I think you'd least likely to see blended together, which I mean is exactly what this show should be, really. It should be about taking risks, testing the waters of what works well together. And I think it's a surprise, but I mean it works well.
Yeah, this episode sort of takes a step back from the vibrancy and the spectacle that are the supernatural episodes of the zombies and the T'Challa as Star-Lord, whereas here it kind of takes the more human side of the MCU with kind of mixed in with the Black Panther sort of culture as well. I think this one is definitely the most different one in a long time. Probably I'm looking probably since the Avengers serial killer one, or even Captain Carter, in terms of that it is more of a grounded story where it's not sort of these supernatural elements to it. So I'm excited to get into it with you as well. And the opening thing I would say for this episode is, does it work for you? Because it's not necessarily a Killmonger and Tony Stark blend isn't necessarily something that I immediately think, well, I wonder what would happen there. Do you know what I mean? And the episode certainly doesn't go in the direction where I think it could have done in regards to, Tony Stark save the universe. And yet that's not really explored whatsoever here. So how do you think it handled
Yeah.
it?
I think they mesh appropriately. I think it works, but I do think it's lackluster, and it wasn't. It didn't rev up to the scale that I thought it would get to. It felt a bit Iron Man 2 in many points. Especially with the
Certainly.
the creation of the drones. And I don't exactly like to think about what I consider to be the worst MCU film. Whenever we're comparing it to what this could have been. I mean, I think seeing Michael B. Jordan back is always very well appreciated, and they're the the makers of these films are quite horny for Michael B. Jordan, it seems, because even in
Understandable.
animation they're desperate to get his top off. But
Yeah.
you know, one thing that me and my brother kept laughing about while we were watching this was just the moments. There's two different moments, and they're about 20 seconds apart, where Michael B. Jordan screams "Wakanda forever," and it's just the most like, just like get me out of here, kind of like
I thought it was so
Wakanda
cringe.
forever,
I thought it
and
was
I'm
so
like,
cringe, man.
just use the archival recordings from Black Panther. If you really couldn't sell it, because I mean, Michael B.
Yeah.
Jordan is incredible. He's probably one of the best working actors today. But a lot of working actors just aren't made for voice acting. Like it's two spectacularly different different jobs. And I think the people that try their hand at it, who are mainstream celebrities, often falter a little bit. And I think we've seen that, namely with Sebastian Stan in this season, because I think he's an incredible actor. But if you go back to episode 1 of Captain Carter, I'd say everyone in that episode, their voice performance kind of falls flat.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I think as you said, Michael B. Jordan is, top three working actors today. In my opinion, I think he's phenomenal. And I think a lot of this episode, his voice work is really good. It's just there's a lot of sort of phoned in lines as well. I think that Wakanda Forever didn't sound good for me at all. It doesn't sound anything like him. I thought it wasn't him for a second because it's like
Hmm.
it just sounds nothing like him. But that being said, I think Killmonger is without doubt like the coolest MCU character in recent years. I love his stuff. I love his character. And he has a really great sort of theme as well. Like the Killmonger score is fantastic. It's really really good. And I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot to be enjoyed here. I think Tony Stark and Eric Killmonger work really really well together. It's a natural blend, and obviously with him being, I think, a Navy SEALs soldier, it makes sense to have him in Afghanistan anyway. Um, but the one thing I think is that this episode is a little bit lackluster, like you said. the episode sort of has animated versions of what Tony Stark has done, be it with the Infinity Gauntlet and those kind of things, and the Avengers. So I think that the episode really had a waste of what would have happened if he's not there, and it does certainly do that to an extent with it does give an Iron Man 2 vibe with the drones, and like you said, it deals with the Obadiah Stane stuff and those kind of things and what happens to Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan. So that's certainly interesting. It's just for me they kind of wasted that potential. So I'm hoping for when we see him next in sort of Sakaar and those kind of things, that maybe try to explore more vibrant elements of his character then. But for this episode, I was more impressed with the Killmonger stuff rather than Tony Stark, to be honest.
Yeah, with Tony Stark, his vocal replacement actor, I had my reservations after, we saw an initial tease, the scene where Killmonger and Tony Stark first meet in Afghanistan was teased, several months ago. So hearing that, I was quite dubious,
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, this guy's kind of doing a halfway impression of Robert Downey Jr., but it's kind of whiny. But I think beyond the first scene, I think you settle into it after doing that, and then you kind of just sit back and you get to enjoy how funny it is, watching Marvel pretend that they haven't recast so many actors within the franchise. The recasting people vocally within the series, but also just watching Don Cheadle's version of Rhodey be planted into the first Iron Man, in place of Terrence Howard. I think that's just funny to me.
It's funny.
In the way that they did that with Mark Ruffalo, putting him in place of Ed Norton in the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
I think that's just funny to watch.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, for sure. And I think this episode, what it does really well is kind of the pacing. There's a lot of really quick scenes that blend together really nicely. It's just I was really expecting, a Tony Stark suit up to Iron Man. They kind of tease the miniaturized arc reactor, and then he sort of as a joke says, "Oh no, it's silly." I was because there is inevitably a showdown between Tony and Killmonger in this episode, which I think was really good. It's just for me, part of me really likes Killmonger so much that I kind of wanted to see him win, if that makes sense. I'm like, come on, Eric, this is, that there's a lot there which I agree upon with his views, but then there's a lot where I kind of think, oh no, you're not going the right way about it, which I think is why
You wish he could have done it without murdering T'Challa.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of parts of his character, I think, even in the Black Panther film, where a lot of people felt the same. He's one of those villains where you can kind of acknowledge his viewpoints and why he would feel a bit betrayed, but at the same time, his methods for doing what he does aren't right. He's very extreme. And like you said, murdering T'Challa in this episode there's a lot of murder in this episode. I think he goes on a bit of a rampage with, Claw, Black Panther, Iron Man. There's bound to be a few others in there as well. I'm not sure if he kills Obadiah Stane. I think Happy Hogan might just knock some out or something. I think in this episode is highlight.
I think he just made far too many steps for himself in general. I think he really didn't need the conspiracies or the drones. Like, he could have just coaxed T'Challa out of Wakanda, killed him, and then gone back to Wakanda and taken the throne by birthright. I think he added unnecessary steps to his plan.
Yeah, definitely. I'd absolutely agree with that. I thought the design of the drones as well was a bit lackluster. As I was expecting maybe a bit of a combination of Iron Man with Black Panther, but you kind of get these sort of generic looking, these generic looking drones that could fit into anywhere. And the animation in this episode is, it's still great. It's just, I don't know. I think the whole drone thing is the aspect of the episode that felt the most unnatural, where it did try to bring back those Iron Man 2 vibes, but I was confused why they did that, just because that's not necessarily a film where it's critically applauded or anything like that. So I thought the drones was an unusual one, to be honest, because it doesn't really fit any character particularly well.
Yeah, I think this was definitely an episode where they, pitched the initial idea and went, "That's genius," and then we were like, "How do they finish? How do we finish this?" And then they just panicked, and they couldn't really think of a meaningful resolution. At least in the way they approach it, I'm glad that they went to Wakanda, because I thought, up to that point, it was maybe approaching too small a scale. I think it maybe still ends up that way, but it is definitely, brought together a bit more by that final showdown. I think, I was sort of surprised by that, just because there's obviously the scene where where Killmonger murders Tony Stark, and he, leaves a Dor Milaje spear to sort of frame the Wakandan government for murdering Tony Stark. But, even if you thought that one Wakandan was responsible for the murder of one American, how can you declare war on an entire country? I
Yeah,
don't
I know
understand
it's
how that's
was that
possible. I mean, it worries me that is possible. But I'm baffled.
was that supposed to be General Ross?
I don't think so. Was
No,
it?
it looked like the character design was supposed to look like him, I feel, but I didn't really, I
I
didn't,
suppose that would have made sense.
I'm not too sure. But nonetheless, yeah, it was a bit of an extreme action there, wasn't it? And with a lot of these what if episodes, I kind of felt the ending was a little bit abrupt. Like they try to put a positive shine in what is, quite a dark ending, and it's a classic MCU thing when they just don't want to lean into the darkness. It seems, apart from the Netflix shows, like just have it be an ending where the villain wins. Like there's nothing wrong with that. There's no need to put a shine on it where Shuri meets Pepper and they plan to expose Killmonger. Like that was such a big misstep for me, because I just didn't really care for it. I would just, I think the ending of when Killmonger and the T'Chaka, I think, just look at the sunset. Yeah, I think that's a perfect really way to end it there. But for me, I think they sort of missed the mark.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much they can do in, 20,
Yeah,
26,
for
27
sure, for
minutes.
sure.
They can't, weirdly enough, I think this episode, felt really long. This and the zombies episode, I think, really made use of the runtime, because here, I thought it was wrapping up around the time that he was in Tony Stark's mansion, and then I looked at it was only 16 minutes in, and I was sort of taken aback because it felt pretty dense. But
Not
yeah,
going
I,
on.
I just think that they don't have the opportunity to effectively tell a story, or they maybe focus on certain elements for too long. I think the best point A to point B episode has been the Doctor Strange one for me, and then the bold risk that they took in having that tragic ending, I think was
Yeah.
really admirable. So here, I think we just want to see that the trend of episode 4 replicated in future episodes.
Yeah, for me, 4 and 5 are the big standouts. I think this show's been really consistent. I really enjoy this episode. It's probably the weakest for a couple of it. Like it's probably the weakest one in a while. But that being said, I think bringing Killmonger into this mix is a fantastic idea, because he's one of my favorite MCU villains, if not my favorite so far. And like I said, Michael B. Jordan, baddest man on the planet, and yeah, I absolutely love him. So for me, mate, if I were going to rate it, I don't have anything to say further in this episode. So I would probably rate it, a 9. It's still really good. I don't mean to be overly negative in this. We're just recording this after Cinderella, so maybe that's why. Maybe it's seeping in, but I did enjoy it. I don't mean to be negative in this. There's a lot I really enjoy here, and it's a funny episode as well. Like they get the Tony Stark humor pretty spot on with this new voice actor. To be honest, I think a lot of the delivery's spot on there. So I did enjoy this one a lot.
I love Michael B. Jordan, and I love Black Panther, and I love Iron Man individually as films. And I think in theory and even in practice, I think the universes mesh well together. But this story that they chose to tell, I think, doesn't match up to the potential, as you said before. Uh, so I would rate this on the lower end of the season. I'd say it's maybe a notch above Captain Carter, but then below everything else. So in my lack of memory as to what I gave Captain Carter, I'd probably give this a 6.5, 7.
Yeah.
We throw around these numbers arbitrarily, but really I'm just representing. It's really not my favorite. I think it had its problems. But it wasn't the story that I think. I think it was. I don't think it's the best story they could have told under the umbrella of a plot that they chose, but the one that they told was just fine. So I mean, I can't say it was bad. Everything that they choose to do is good. It's not the best that they could have done. So I'd give it probably a 7.
Yeah, and with all these sort of TV show reviews you see in the channel, like we usually record them the day of, at latest the day after. So our thoughts are always fresh. So that's why if you're watching these back to back or whatever, and our ratings don't really make sense, don't take that, take it with a pinch of salt, because it's just how we feel in the moment. So as
Yeah.
I think we both would agree, this show's been really good. Certainly there's episodes that have been better than others, but overall, I think the Disney Plus shows have really surprised me, Callum, because there's not really a bad one in the bunch, and there's ones that I definitely think are better. And there's ones that have surprised me. But I think they've really hit the ground running here, because I did expect a stinker out of the 4 so far, and there's not really been that, to be honest. So I'm really excited. And obviously, we're releasing this, after the Hawkeye trailer, and that looks promising as well. So, I'm all aboard this Disney Plus train, to be honest.
I think the way they chose to release this was maybe not the best idea. I think animation is something that I think a lot of audiences just aren't a fan of. I think there's plenty of MCU fans who won't recognize the significance of this series in the broader scope of the MCU, and they'll just give it a miss because animation isn't their thing. But I think if they had spread out the release a bit, instead of doing 9 episodes back to back, because that's the same commitment as WandaVision, and that had a huge that had a huge confidence in it before it was even released. But here, I think even big MCU fans were maybe dubious of what the quality was going to be, or whether it was worth their time. So I think releasing 9 back to back, week to week, wasn't maybe the wisest idea. I think they maybe could have done 3 weeks of a show, then 1 what if, and then 3 weeks of a show, 1 what if, and pieced it, spread it out over a year or whatever, with one episode every few weeks. I think that maybe would have played a bit better.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I absolutely think you're spot on. But yeah, that wraps up another What If review in the channel. As we said, check out our What If playlist. You can see all the episodes up to this point, and all that stuff. And of course, email, iTunes link, all that stuff's in the description. We really appreciate all the support you guys have been showing us recently. We're making our way to 250 subscribers, so we're really excited about that. And yeah, we hope you guys are all keeping well. Hope you guys are all keeping safe and well. Hope your family and friends are keeping safe and well too. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.